Good afternoon and welcome to today's seminar, Navigating Solo Aging, Essential Legal Planning for Independent Living. My name is attorney Erin Nunes, and I am a partner with the law firm of Surprenant and Beneski. We focus on estate planning, elder law, asset protection, helping folks qualify for mass health who may need care at home or in a long-term care setting. We have three physical locations, one in New Bedford, one in Easton, and one in Hyannis. But we're also very willing to meet prospective clients where they are. So if you are homebound, if you are in an assisted living, if you are in a nursing home, we are very happy to come to you. We strive very hard to make sure that the estate planning process is accessible for people. Joining us, joining us today is attorney Rebecca Spinner, another member of the attorney team at Surprenant and Beneski, and Aileen Gerhart, who is the founder of Beacon Patient Solutions and Navigating Solo Network. She's an independent board certified patient advocate, a national authority on solo aging educator and advocate, and a certified senior advisor. So thank you both for joining us and your willingness to share your knowledge with the community. For those who are in attendance today, we will be answering questions at the end of the program, and you are welcome to submit any questions you have during our time together using the chat feature. Let's dive right in. The landscape of aging is changing. Gone are the days when a spouse and children automatically formed a safety net for later in life. Today, a growing number of adults are facing their later years alone, navigating the joys and the challenges of solo aging. Statistics from the U.S. Census Bureau paint a very vivid picture. In 2021, about 22.1 million adults, 55 and older, lived alone, among whom 6.1 million had no children. AARP's survey further underscores this trend, revealing that 12% of the population over 50 live alone, are unmarried or unpartnered, and have no living children. So, Rebecca, can you tell us a little bit more and help us understand exactly what a solo ager is?
Yeah, absolutely. There are really a lot of people who fall into the solo ager category. It could be, like you mentioned, somebody is unmarried or they don't have a partner, or they had a spouse and their spouse passed away. Maybe they don't have children, or maybe they have a wonderful support system, but their support system, is in California and they're here in Massachusetts. So there are a lot of people who may fall into this solo ager category. Um, there are a lot of people who might not fall into that category right now, but who might want to start planning for the future because, we may have a partner, we may have people who are around us close by, and things might change. One example that I can think of off the top of my head, we had a client who was married, she had her whole estate plan in place. Her husband passed away, and that was, sad for her, but she did have successors listed on all of her documents. So she had someone to be her power of attorney and her healthcare proxy. Unfortunately, her nephew, who was named in that role, ended up getting early onset dementia. So now she had nobody named in her estate planning documents anymore, nobody who could step in and make, decisions in the event that she could no longer make them for herself. So that's why I think whether you're a solo ager now or not, this is really, really important because you might be a solo ager in the future, whether you plan to be or whether you don't plan to be. Some of us, are living alone, intentionally. We like to be independent and we're on our own. And some of us maybe have spouses or partners or family members who are living with us, friends, but that could change down the line. So I think the important thing here is that we want to plan ahead because we don't know what the future might hold.
Absolutely. If I were to define myself as a solo ager, whether that's now or in the future, what are some of the questions that I should be asking myself to make things, as easy as possible for my loved ones and to make sure that my wishes are honored? Are there certain key things that I should be considering?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of things to be considering. You could see some of them up here on this slide. Do you have somebody named in your documents or on your bank account who will be able to step in and handle, paying your bills in the event that you couldn't do that for yourself in the future? Do you have someone who knows, what your wishes are in terms of medical care? If you became incapacitated, is there someone who can step in and make medical decisions on your behalf? Have you thought about, what your assets look like and whether you are set up to be able to get yourself through your retirement years, in the way that you're going to feel most comfortable? Do you have beneficiaries listed on things? So there's a lot of different considerations here, and we're going to get into them in a little bit more detail. But I think in terms of the solo aging context here, traditionally, as Erin kind of mentioned before, spouses, adult children, family members, they played a crucial role in supporting this type of decision making for you in the event you couldn't make decisions for yourself anymore. And I think the question now becomes, who is going to step into those roles if you don't have immediate family members or somebody who's close by who can take that on? And we'll be the first to acknowledge that it is not easy often to, go through the process of figuring out who's going to take on these roles. If that's going to be a professional, if that's going to be a close friend, trying to figure that out can be difficult. One thing that we try to do is we try to partner with our clients to help them, you know, vet who is going to serve these roles. So if you're going to have a professional who's going to be able to step in for you, whether that's a geriatric care manager, whether you're naming a bank who's going to be able to step in and make legal and financial decisions, what I like to do with my clients is I like to sit down with them, with these professionals, and interview them and figure out, is this the right person for you? I might recommend 3 different financial advisors, and you meet with somebody and they don't feel like quite the right fit for you. So I think the really important thing is making sure you have the right team for you, because not everybody is for everybody, but there are a ton of wonderful professionals that we can help you get connected with who would be able to serve in these types of roles. So some of the key considerations that we're going to be talking about today, number one is assembling a trusted team. This is going to be really important, like we've kind of just touched upon, who is going to be able to step in and help you in the event you couldn't do something for yourself in the future. Making sure you have your foundational estate planning documents in place. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. And then we're going to talk about some additional estate planning tools that can help folks do many different things, including avoiding probate, protecting assets. It really kind of depends upon what's most important to you and what your goals are. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today.
Aileen, are there any types of services or recommendations that you might offer to solo agers?
So, as an independent patient advocate, I work with people navigating the complexities of the healthcare system, and unfortunately, there are many. Um, and I also coach people on putting together an advanced care plan. And so, all of the things that you guys have touched on thus far are well on the path to what I suggest as well. And for me, that support network is that foundational piece for solo aging planning. I'd like to also just say that all of this applies to anyone, no matter what framework they see themselves in, and you guys have both touched on that. But I always like to joke and say that if people are thinking about planning, the fact that solo agers do it so intentionally that they should thank a solo ager because they're thinking about planning.
Absolutely.
So, thanks.
So along those lines, like Aileen just said, having that support team is really a crucial step in making sure you're set up for your future to move through your retirement years. So assembling that trusted team, identifying the individuals in your life who understand your wishes and priorities. This might be, family members, friends, A trusted professional. You might have a patient advocate who is going to be that part of that trusted team. We like to refer to this team as sort of your inner circle. So sometimes this includes professionals, sometimes it doesn't. But ensuring open communication amongst the people who are part of your trusted team is so important, because these are the people who are going to be there to support you when you can't, speak up for yourself. All right. So assembling your team of professionals is the next step here. Some of you may already have these types of professionals in your life, but if you don't, it is really, really important to make sure you're thinking about these things. Do you have a financial advisor who's going to be able to review your current accounts, your policies, the things you have in place, and make sure that you're making the most of your income and your assets, as you're moving through your life? Do you have an accountant who is looking at your taxes and making sure you're making the most of credits that might be available to you, or thinking about how you can minimize your income or your estate tax liability? A geriatric care manager or some other part of your medical care team, somebody like Aileen, like we were just talking about, an advocate, somebody who's going to go with you to the doctor's appointments or meet you at the hospital if something happens, a second set of ears to hear what's going on and understand the diagnosis as it's being explained to you, and make sure they know what all your medications are and things like that. I think this becomes a really, really important role when you're a solo ager, because it can be very overwhelming, regardless of what age you are. If you're in an emergency situation, you're in the hospital, and a doctor is talking to you and they're trying to explain to you what's going on, it can be coming at you 100 miles a minute there, and it can be really hard to keep track of everything that's going on. So having someone there with you who can help advocate for you, who can help understand what's going on, can be really, really helpful. And someone like a geriatric care manager as well, there's so many things that this person can do for you. They can help coordinate caregivers if you need them in the future, whether at home or whether you decide you're going to move into an assisted living facility. They can help you with that, coordinating appointments, making sure you have transportation to get to and from your appointments. Some of these folks can act in a healthcare proxy role if you're somebody who doesn't have, a family member or somebody who can act in that role on your behalf. So I think that is a really, really important part of your professional team. And certainly, if that's something you're interested in, we can help get you connected with the appropriate resources. And then, of course, an elder law attorney is going to be a really, really important part of your professional team. The purpose of an elder law attorney is to make sure, one, that all of your documents are in place. We want to make sure you have the things you need to be able to take care of yourself during your lifetime and to take care of your assets after you've passed away. But an elder law attorney is also going to be somebody who can help look at preserving your assets. If you're somebody who wants to protect assets from the cost of your long-term care because you want to pass them along to your beneficiaries after you're gone, that's something that we can help you do as well. But really, what's so important when you put this team together is making sure your team is collaborating. You want all of these professionals to be working together to make sure your plan is going to work the way it's supposed to when the time comes. I might put together a plan for you and I might say, I think you should put this asset into your trust. And then I might talk to your financial advisor and he's like, well, I don't know if that's such a good idea because there's going to be, tax implications to that. So it's really important that all of these professionals collaborate and work together. How you can actually find these professionals. I would say if you're looking for a GCM, a life care manager, an advocate, please feel free to reach out to us. If you call our office, we have a client services team who can give you referrals and suggestions. I'm sure Aileen would be happy to be a resource for you as well. So just reach out to us and we're happy to connect you. If you are in the Cape, on the Cape area, there is something called the Cape Cod Senior Resource Group, and they actually have a website. I think it's ccsrg.org. Is that correct, Krista? Yes? Okay, perfect. And if you go on ccsrg.org, they actually have an online guide that has all different kinds of resources that are available to seniors in the Cape Cod area. They also have a printed out version of this guide. You can get it at a lot of the councils on aging on the Cape, but if that's something you're interested in, you want the physical one, just let us know and we can make sure to get that out to you. And then in terms of, sorry, just one more thing on that slide, Erin. In terms of getting healthcare agents or powers of attorney or trustees, a lot of times folks will use banks to act in the role of a power of attorney or a trustee. Bluestone Bank is a bank that we work with quite often who will act in that role. But if you want to have a professional, a fiduciary who can act in that role, we can certainly get you connected as well. All right, and these are just some additional resources. We actually have Aileen's website right here. Reliable RN is another one. There are a lot of different resources that are available to you. These websites are helpful. But again, if you want any referrals, with the context of we've worked with these people before, please feel free to reach out to us. And then these are just some more websites and places that you can go and get the information. So just some additional tools here that we wanted to mention. Something that a lot of folks will do is they will prepay for their funeral arrangements. This is something that I think gives a lot of peace of mind to us, the people who are doing it, because you can ensure that whatever it is that you want to happen at the end of your life is going to happen, whether you want to be buried or cremated, whether you're somebody who, wants to have a big extravagant service, or you're one of those people who's like, don't do anything, go out to lunch on me, making sure that you have those plans in place. And it also takes the burden off of whoever you do pick to be your decision maker for your estate. It takes the burden off of them, both financially and in terms of having to make the decision about what's going to happen. So that can be a really nice thing to do ahead of time. Prepaying for your funeral arrangements is also something we sometimes use as a strategy to spend down in the event you needed mass health in the future. So there's a lot of different reasons why you might do it. And this is something you can do just with your local funeral home. You go in there and let them know what your wishes are. They give you kind of a worksheet to fill out, and you can actually pay for that ahead of time. It also allows you to kind of lock in today's prices, because I think, as everybody knows, things are just getting more expensive. So that's another benefit of doing it that way. All right, so the next section, we're going to address some of the common concerns of solo agers. So we're going to talk about personal goals and preferences, healthcare decisions, financial planning, and legal representation. So this first section, personal goals and preferences, really what this section is about is what is most important to you as an individual? What does a good day look like for you? So, when we're thinking about somebody else stepping in and making day-to-day decisions for us, if I were to get a dementia and Alzheimer's diagnosis down the line, am I somebody who wants to be kept at home as long as possible? Or would I be okay with going into, say, an assisted living facility? There are so many very beautiful assisted living facilities here in Massachusetts. Am I more of a private person, or do I prefer to be in more of a social setting? Do I want to be around other people? Do I want to be involved in activities? These are the types of conversations you want to have with whoever is going to be making your day-to-day decisions, your power of attorney, your healthcare proxy, the person who's going to, be doing those things for you, whether that's your geriatric care manager, whether that's a family member or friend, determining what you want is really important. And sometimes you have to think about those things you may not have thought about before, because you just live your life day to day, how you live your life. But if somebody else had to step in and make those decisions, do they know? Does that person know what it is that you would want? So what's important is meeting and having these conversations, or getting it down on paper while you have the capacity to do so, because, there are people who can step in the event of an emergency, even if you haven't met with them beforehand, but they're not going to know who you are as a person and the things that are important to you. So I think building those relationships beforehand and having those conversations is really, really important. All right. We've kind of already touched on that a little bit. Yeah. Thank you, Erin. Healthcare decisions. Appointing a healthcare proxy is really, really important. We're going to talk more about the document itself in a little bit, but figuring out who is going to be making those medical decisions for you in the event that you were to become incapacitated is very important. We want to make sure that we're thinking about that and getting somebody in that role. Something that some folks will do is something called a MOLST, stands for Medical Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment, or a DNR, a Do Not Resuscitate Order. These are documents that you fill out with your physician, with your doctor's office. Sometimes you can do them at the hospital. And these are legally binding documents where you make end-of-life decisions. So you can say, I do not want to be resuscitated. No matter what, I don't want to be resuscitated, or I don't want to be intubated. Or I don't want artificial hydration or nutrition, or I do want all of these things. So these are legally binding documents where you can put your wishes down. And if you have that filled out and your doctor has it on file, or you have it on your fridge, I know a lot of people stick this document right on their fridge. If someone, the EMTs work to come in, they're going to follow your instructions on that document. So if you have, strong feelings and wishes about your end of life care, your life sustaining treatment, those are really great documents to get in place, but they do have to be done with the doctor's office. So you would want to talk to your doctor about that. All right, and then financial planning. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but assessing what your financial resources look like and thinking about what your potential future needs might be, and making sure that the plan you have in place will allow your assets to take care of you during your lifetime. And, if you're looking at it and you're saying, I think that I might not, these assets might not stretch all the way if I end up needing long-term care, for example, then thinking about, okay, I might have to qualify for Mass Health or Medicaid in the future. And how am I going to do that? These are the types of conversations you want to start having with your financial advisor, with your elder law attorney, to figure out and make sure that your, resources are going to stretch as far as they need to for you. Another thing is making sure you have adequate medical insurance coverage. There are folks who will review what your current medical insurance coverage is, and they'll, help you figure out, is this the best plan for me? Am I getting the best, cost? Am I covered the way that I need to be based on the conditions that I have, the medications that I need? Most of these people do this service for free. Doesn't cost you anything. So if that's something that you need, certainly we can connect you with those resources as well.
I think a lot of people are aware that long-term care insurance can be costly, and you have to meet certain criteria from a health perspective in order to qualify. Rebecca, can you talk to us a little bit about some of the pitfalls and the benefits of having long-term care insurance?
Yeah, sure. So, long-term care insurance can be fantastic. If it's affordable for you, it can be a really great thing to have in place. So the kind of biggest thing that I always tell people is, if you are thinking about long-term care insurance, you should look into it sooner rather than later, because the younger you are, the healthier you are, the less expensive it's going to be, and the more likely you'll be able to qualify for it. So long-term care insurance is exactly what it sounds like. It's insurance that can help pay for the cost of your long-term care. Typically, there'll be a certain amount of money that the insurance will pay per day for a certain number of years. And this can help supplement the cost of care at home in the community, whether home is assisted living or you still, you're living in a house. And it can also help supplement the cost of care in a long-term care facility. I think that one of the reasons why a lot of people don't like long-term care insurance is that for a very long time, it was sort of a use it or lose it model. So you'd pay into this long-term care insurance all your life, and then if you didn't need it, or you didn't need the full benefit of it, you kind of just lost it. You paid that money in and you didn't get the benefit out of it. Nowadays, they have these sort of hybrid policies where you can have long-term care insurance that will pay out during your lifetime for, what you need. And if you don't use the full benefit, or if you don't use any of it, it can become like a a life insurance policy, it'll have a death benefit for your beneficiaries. So that is a little more palatable for people, I think, than the sort of use it or lose it model. But it is important to, look into that sooner rather than later, because it can become cost prohibitive the older that you get. The only other thing I would want to mention here with the long-term care insurance is that if you have long-term care insurance that meets the state minimum, which is at least $125 a day for at least 2 years, that policy actually can protect your home from a Medicaid lien. So if you have a long-term care insurance policy and you're thinking about, is it worth keeping it or not keeping it, it might be worth having a conversation with an elder law attorney and your financial advisor to figure out whether it makes sense to keep that policy in order to try to protect your home from that lien.
I would just add to that discussion that with long-term care insurance and that ability for it to protect your home from the cost of long-term care, you can't have exhausted the policy on your home care. And that's something that unfortunately a lot of people don't realize. So if you have been using your long-term care insurance to keep yourself home as long as possible, which many people want to do, if you've exhausted the policy and then you subsequently need long-term care, it's not going to have protected your home from any mass health lien. So, sadly, that's something that you really need to pay close attention to. And sometimes, can force people into a long-term care setting sooner than they might have otherwise wanted to go, because they're looking to make sure that they have that option to protect the home still available.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you, Erin. Okay, so this next slide talks about beneficiary designations. I think that this is an often overlooked but really critical topic to talk about when we're thinking about estate planning. A beneficiary is really just a person or an entity that you designate to receive your assets when you've passed away. So whether that's on your life insurance, your IRA, your 401k, your 403b, your brokerage account, on your bank accounts, a lot of times you can name a TOD, transfer on death designation, or POD, payable on death designation. And the importance of this is that when you pass away, these assets will go to the people you've listed without having to go through the probate court process. For most people, they want to avoid the probate court process if at all possible, because it is time consuming, it's expensive, and there's really no reason to go through it if you do planning beforehand. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about the estate planning documents. But a lot of times people don't realize that if you have a beneficiary listed on an account, that overrides whatever you put in your will. So it is very important to make sure that you are reviewing your beneficiary designations from time to time, because something might change in your life. Your friendships might change. Maybe you have family members who pass away or friends who pass away, and you had named them as beneficiaries. Or maybe you had done a will more recently, and your will outlines the people that you really want to receive your assets, which is different than your original beneficiary designations. So it's important to make sure you're reviewing your beneficiary designations from time to time to make sure that those are still the people you want to receive things, because those beneficiary designations will override anything that you put in your will or in your trust documents. And just a couple things there, just some of the reasons why you might want to review. Like I said, people passing away, somebody getting married or divorced or remarried, if new family members are born or friends are born, changes in relationships, and opening and closing of accounts. So you might think, oh, I already have beneficiaries and everything. I know I've done that. But you forgot that you opened a new account, a couple of years ago. So just making sure you're updating those beneficiaries from time to time. All right, legal representation. So granting power of attorney to a trusted individual to manage your financial and legal matters is extremely important. And I'm going to talk more about the actual document itself, the power of attorney document, but really, this is a person who is going to step in and manage things for you in the event you couldn't do it for yourself in the future. So the person that's going to pay your bills, deal with your real estate if they need to, file your taxes, things that you do for yourself on a day-to-day basis that somebody would have to step in to do for you in the future. As I kind of touched upon before, some people will name a bank to act in this role. It could be a family member or a friend. It could be an attorney. We don't do that for folks in our firm, but there are attorneys who, will act in a fiduciary role for people. So, thinking about who you would want to take on that role is very important. And seeking guidance from an experienced elder law and estate planning attorney is going to be, the most important thing in getting all of this set up.
So Rebecca, how exactly does one vet an attorney to make sure that they have the necessary expertise and training to guide people through these concerns?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are a lot of folks who will do estate planning who are not necessarily estate planning attorneys. There are solar practitioners or different firms who will put together a will for you or put together a power of attorney, but they don't necessarily specialize in the elder law piece of this. And that is really, really important because there are so many laws that we are thinking about and so many circumstances that may come up in your life that we're thinking about that sort of your jack of all trades lawyer is not necessarily even aware of. They might not intentionally be leaving something out, but they are just not even sure what they're looking for. So the first thing is if you can find a CELA certified attorney, which is a certified elder law attorney, this is a distinction that you get through the National Elder Law Foundation. I believe now there are only about 30 in the entire state of Massachusetts. And we actually have two of them in our office here. Dan and Michelle, Surprenant and Beneski, are both certified elder law attorneys. So that is going to be a great place to start because CELA certified attorneys have to go through an extensive process, as Erin knows, because she's working on getting that distinction herself. It involves testing. It involves a certain number of years of practice with certain outcomes, recommendations from other CELA certified attorneys. So that's always going to be a really good place to start because these are people who really, really know elder law. And you can go on the National Elder Law Foundation's website and actually search in there. They have a little search bar. Krista, if you could put that in the chat, the search for that. And you can put in your area code or your town, and they can, give you a list of the CELAs who are close by to you. So that's going to be a really great place to start. Another thing is longevity. How long has this firm been around? Unfortunately, we get a lot of folks into our office who had an attorney who passed away or closed their practice, and they were a solo practitioner. So now there's no attorney there who can take over their file. So there's a lot of value in having a firm as opposed to a solo practitioner. There are a lot of wonderful solo practitioners, and this isn't to disparage them at all, but I think that there is a benefit in having a long-standing firm that will be there, 20 years from now when something happens and you need somebody to be able to step in and help your team. Relationship is always important. Finding somebody who's going to be the right fit for you. Like I said earlier, not every person is the right fit for everybody. You might meet with me and be like, Rebecca's a little bit much, and you might meet with Erin and say she's the perfect person for me. So making sure that the person you're meeting with makes you comfortable. This feels like the right fit for you. Plan maintenance is also really important. Different firms handle this differently. Some firms have plan maintenance packages that you can purchase so you can pay them and they'll make sure that they're touching base with you every so often. The way we do it in our firm is for all of our clients, we offer a free review meeting every 3 years so that at least once every 3 years we're reviewing everything you've done, making sure everything is still exactly how you want it. If something changes in your life or changes in law, you can make sure that your documents are staying up to date. So that's also going to be an important thing because a lot of times people do their documents and they don't look at them for 20 years. They did it and then they forgot about it, and things change in your life. Maybe you did those documents when you first got married or when you first graduated from college or you had your first child. There's a lot of life events that lead people to doing these documents, and then they don't look at them and things change. So it's important to make sure your documents are changing too. We've touched on this already. An attorney who specializes in elder law is going to be really important. If you have a disabled beneficiary, making sure that your attorney also specializes in special needs law. That's really important because there are a lot of considerations there. And if you have a disabled beneficiary, you want to make sure that that person is not going to lose access to their government benefits if they inherit from you when you've passed away. And then just making sure you're meeting with somebody who is getting the information to you in a way that is clear, you're comprehending it, and you feel comfortable with the recommendations. I think that is ultimately the most important thing. If you meet with somebody and you're feeling pressured to move forward, or you're feeling like you're not 100% understanding and they're not able to provide you with the clarity, then that person might not be the right fit for you. So meeting with multiple attorneys is absolutely okay. Vetting people and seeing who's going to be the best fit for you, I think, is really important.
So Rebecca, as a solo ager who maybe has no planning in place at all, where would you recommend that they start from a legal perspective?
So in our office, we have this set of documents. It's 5 documents that we refer to as your foundational documents. And these are the documents that really every person should have in place from the time that they're 18 or older, whether you're a solo ager or not, whether you have $5 or $5 million in the bank. These documents are important for every single person. So the first of those documents is the will, the last will and testament. And I think this is the document that most people are the most familiar with. They've heard of it before. This is the document where you say who's going to be in charge of administering your estate after you've passed away, and who you want to actually receive your assets after you're gone. I think the most common misconception with the will is if I have a will in place, that means that my family does not have to go through the probate court process. But that is actually not true. The will is created as a set of instructions for the probate court, so the court knows who you want to be in charge and who you want to receive things. Here in Massachusetts, the probate court process takes at least a year because creditors have a year to come and make claims on your estate. And typically you're looking at probably around $6,000 to go through that process if you're hiring an attorney to do it for you. And it can be completely avoided just by having other planning in place beforehand. So the things that have to go through probate are the things that are in your name alone when you pass away. So that means they don't have a beneficiary listed on them. There's no joint owner. They're not owned in a trust. Things that are in your name individually have to go through that probate court process when you passed away. So if you're interested in avoiding probate, you can avoid it on all of your bank accounts and things simply by naming beneficiaries on them. If you own real estate, then we would have to kind of talk a little bit further about how you might want to avoid probate on your real estate. We'll get into that in a little bit in more detail. So the second of those foundational documents is the healthcare proxy. And this is the document where you say who can make medical decisions for you in the event that you were to become incapacitated. So this document only works when a doctor says in writing, you can no longer make medical decisions for yourself. This document is extremely important to have in place because if you were to become incapacitated in the future, there is no person who would be able to just step into your shoes and make medical decisions, no family members or friends, if you don't have this document in place beforehand. So if you don't have a healthcare proxy and you become incapacitated, somebody is going to have to go to court and petition a court for what's called guardianship, the power to make your medical decisions. That is a very expensive process, typically around $7,000 or $8,000 to go through that process. It's public because anybody can just come forward and say, well, I don't think it should be her sister who's making the decisions. I think it should be me, her brother, or, something like that. And ultimately, a judge is going to get to decide who's making those medical decisions for you. And I think that this is really important in the solo aging context because, maybe you do have family members and that maybe they even are close by, but maybe they're not involved in your life. Maybe you want your best friend to be your healthcare proxy. Well, in the event something happened to you, in all likelihood, the court's going to pick whoever your sort of closest, relative is to act in that role. And that might not be what you want. So it's really important to decide beforehand who's going to be making those medical decisions for you. There is a standard healthcare proxy form that you can get from the doctor's office or the hospital. It's 1 page and it says Massachusetts healthcare proxy on the top. That document is fine in most circumstances, but there are a couple of things that come up as you can continue to get older, where that healthcare proxy might not actually cover you 100%. And the thing we see most often is if you were to get a dementia or an Alzheimer's diagnosis in the future, doctors often prescribe anti-psych meds to deal with some of the symptoms of those illnesses. And here in Massachusetts, we have a special law that's meant to protect incapacitated people from receiving medications that they don't need. But what it says is if you don't have that specific power outlined in your healthcare proxy saying your agent can authorize that you receive those medications, your agent would still have to go to court and petition a court for what's called Rogers authority. It's the power to give you those medications if you were to need them. And it can be completely avoided just by having a more robust healthcare proxy in place beforehand that outlines those powers in your healthcare proxy. So that's another reason why it's important to go to an elder law attorney, because you might do a healthcare proxy with an attorney and they don't know about that rule. So it's important to make sure that you get that in place beforehand. The next document is something called an advance directive. It's also sometimes referred to as a living will. So you may have heard that terminology before, but this is the document where you can actually write down all of your wishes for how you would want to be cared for in the event that you could no longer speak for yourself. So if you became incapacitated in the future and your healthcare proxy had to step in and make those medical decisions, this is the document where you give them the guidance as to the decisions that you would want made. So we ask you everything from sort of the end of life decisions. So are you somebody who wants to be resuscitated or not? Do you want artificial hydration and nutrition, pain relieving medications, those types of things? But we also ask you things that are not necessarily end of life, but that would come up if someone had to make those day-to-day decisions for you. So do you want to be kept at home as long as possible? Would you be okay with going into, say, an assisted living facility? Those types of day-to-day questions. And I think it can be really helpful if you've thought about who the person is that you're going to want to act in this role, to go through that document together and have those conversations so that that person really knows what your wishes and desires are. Here in Massachusetts, the advance directive is not a legally binding document, which means your healthcare agent can still make whatever decision they think is best when the time comes. But the purpose is to give them the guidance they need to be able to make those decisions on your behalf. So that's the advance directive document. And the last of those foundational documents is the durable power of attorney. And this is the document where you say who can make legal and financial decisions for you. So if you couldn't make those decisions for yourself, who would you want to be able to step into your shoes and pay your bills and deal with your real estate, file your taxes, sign your name on a document, those types of things. Same thing as the healthcare proxy. If you don't have a durable power of attorney in place and you were to become incapacitated, somebody is going to have to go to court and petition a court for what's called conservatorship over you, which is the power to make your legal and financial decisions. Same cost, same public process, same ability for somebody to come forward and contest, and ultimately a judge would get to decide who's making those legal and financial decisions for you. It used to be that you could have a power of attorney in place that was kind of like this 1-page document, and it said, this person could do anything for me that I can do for myself. As Erin likes to say, that document no longer cuts the mustard. So if you have that old power of attorney that was just kind of general and said, this person can do everything for me that I can do for myself, you definitely want to get that reviewed by an elder law attorney to make sure it's still going to work for you. Because a lot of times banks will not accept that document anymore. They want to see very clearly every single power outlined that your power of attorney has for them to be able to use that document. So if you have these documents done, I really recommend having them reviewed to make sure they're still going to work for you the way that you want them to.
If I were concerned about having my estate avoid probate, as you've mentioned, or protecting my assets from the cost of long-term care and protecting it for my beneficiaries. What type of planning would you recommend for that?
Yeah, so for most people, if we're trying to avoid probate on your assets, we're probably going to be setting up some type of a trust. There are a couple different types of trusts, and I'll go over them in a minute here, but they can be used to do a whole slew of different things. You can use a trust to minimize estate tax liability. You can use a trust to provide for pets. So, you might not have children, but you might have a dog that you love more than anything in the world, and you want to leave behind your assets to take care of that pet until it passes. You can do that through the use of a trust. If you are somebody who's charitably inclined, we can set up a trust to make charitable contributions for you. And the two main types of trust that we're going to be talking about is the revocable trust and the irrevocable trust. And one of these trusts protects assets from the cost of long-term care. That's the irrevocable trust. And the revocable trust is really created to avoid that probate court process. So you could flip to the next slide, Erin. All right, so we like to think of the irrevocable trust sort of like a protective umbrella. So for example, if you put your home into an irrevocable trust, that is going to get a 5-year clock started to protect your home from the cost of any long-term care you might need in the future. And the great thing about the irrevocable trust is it really is a very flexible tool. People hear irrevocable and it sounds very scary, but I promise you it is not as scary as it sounds. Really, the only thing you're giving up in order to gain the protection of an irrevocable trust is your ability to directly tap into the principal of what you put into that trust. So if all we're putting into this trust is your house, what that means kind of practically is that it becomes really difficult to get, say, a reverse mortgage or a new home equity line of credit on your property. You're putting your property in with the hopes of not pulling the equity out in the future. Because if you could just reach in and pull that equity out, Mass Health would say, great, reach in there and use that to pay for your care. We're not going to pay for it. So what you're giving up in order to gain that protection is your ability to directly access the principal of what you've put in there. But the great thing about the irrevocable trust is you can still sell your property at any time. So if you decided in the future, I want to downsize, my house is too much for me, I'm going to go into a condo, you would sell your property out of the trust, a check would come in the name of the trust, and then you could use those proceeds to purchase your new property. Because nothing ever left that protective umbrella of the trust, everything is still considered to be protected, and you're not restarting that 5-year clock. The revocable living trust, on the other hand, is more like a basket because you, as the person who's creating it, can reach in and take things out at any time. You could buy things, sell things, leave nothing in that trust if you wanted to. You have complete control and access to all of the assets that are in there. But what that means is you're not gaining that mass health protection. You're not gaining that nursing home protection because you have unfettered access to it. So if you're somebody who, you want to avoid probate on your assets, but you don't really care so much about, whether there's a lot left behind or anything at all when you're gone, then a revocable trust would probably be a better tool for you. But the great thing is both of these trusts avoid probate. Both of them can be used to minimize estate tax liability. Both trusts can be used to give your beneficiaries creditor and divorce protection. And both of them can be used for special needs planning. So if you have a disabled beneficiary, to make sure you're protecting that disabled beneficiary as well.
Thank you, Rebecca and Aileen, for all of your valuable information and the guidance that you've given today. Now let's highlight some of the to-dos that you might want to take care of. So create your legal documents. Having a power of attorney and an advance directive in place is critical, as Rebecca has outlined for us. These are the documents that are going to allow you to designate a trusted individual to make financial and medical decisions on your behalf in the event that you are unable to do so. Seek professional guidance. Consult with an elder law attorney and a financial planner to help you develop a comprehensive plan that addresses your specific needs and goals. Build your support network. Connect with other solo agers through community groups, online forums, or local senior centers. Having a network of supportive individuals can combat some of the loneliness and provide valuable resources and advice for you. Explore alternative care options. So research assisted living facilities, home care services, co-housing communities that cater to the needs of independent seniors. If you don't know where to start, there are great organizations that we can connect you to that can help you navigate those options. And most importantly, stay informed. Keep yourself updated on the latest resources and services available to solo agers. Utilize organizations like AARP and the National Council on Aging for valuable information and for support. And remember, solo aging is not a solitary journey. With careful planning, proactive decision-making, and a strong support network, you can navigate the stage of life with confidence and with grace. Embrace the freedom and independence that solo aging offers while also taking steps to secure your future and to ensure your well-being. By doing so, you can turn the challenges into opportunities and forge a path filled with purpose, connection, and a real sense of fulfillment. At Surprenant and Beneski, our goal is to help you achieve your goals, and we truly value the trust that you place in us to provide accurate information and necessary guidance. If you are looking for a place to start, a free consultation with one of our knowledgeable attorneys is really a great place. You are welcome to request your free 90-minute consultation by calling our office or by visiting our website, myfamilyestateplanning.com, where you can also sign up for email updates. So just in conclusion, focus on the importance of timely and proactive planning. Look into the availability of supportive resources and professional guidance. And again, if you have any questions, any concerns about where to start, who to reach out to, contact our office. We really want to be a resource for you. And even if it's not our direct services that you need, we are very happy to connect you to trusted individuals in the community so that you can feel supported and less worried about, making the right decision or finding somebody who's reliable and who's going to be responsible and responsive to you. So that being said, we are very happy to answer any questions that you might have. If you do have those questions, please feel free, as I said, to put them into the chat feature. We will be sending out this recording to you within a few business days. And I want to thank you, so much for attending. We appreciate that you're thinking ahead. Being proactive is so important. And we appreciate the time that you've spent. And again, Aileen and Rebecca, thank you so much for all the valuable information that you shared today.
I think Aileen has her little Zoom hand raised.
I that was from a while ago, but what I will say is in my work with solo agers, I know that some of the designations and the pressure of finding those designations can be a barrier from doing the homework of what I want and what I don't want. So I actually like to flip the advanced care planning process on its head a little bit differently than my attorney friends, and that I look at it in 4D, knowing there aren't 4 dimensions, but first deciding what you want and what you don't want, documenting, doing your own homework of want and what you don't want, designating that, working with a professional to make sure that's documented properly, and then discussing that, rinsing and repeating, and starting all over again. So I know often for people in general, because we're human, we procrastinate and don't like to do the hard things. But for solo agers, often those designees can be a real barrier to doing the figuring out of what I want and what I don't want. And so I really stress for people that you then have the benefit to work with really good professionals, really good elder law attorneys. But coming into it, knowing what you want and what you don't want can be really, really helpful. So I just wanted to share that in terms of some barriers that sometimes come up for solo agers.
Yeah,
In
I think that's a really great point. And just to kind of piggyback off of that, if you are having a difficult time figuring out what it is that you want, because it can be really difficult, it's also okay to come in and say, I really don't know what I want. Can we have a conversation about what I should even be thinking about? Because sometimes people just don't even know where to start. They don't even know
right,
where to begin with thinking about these things. So, giving any one of us that has been on this presentation here a call and just saying, hey, where do I even start to think about these things? Because I'm really just not sure is also okay. You are not expected to know everything yourself. And that's why we all want to be a resource for you to be able to go through those things. And then when you get to the point where you're ready to pick who you want to designate in those roles, like I said, I am more than happy to sit down with people and actually vet the folks that you're thinking about naming in those roles. If that's something you need help with, give me a call. We can do that together. I know it is overwhelming. I know it can be really, really, as Aileen said, a big barrier to overcome is figuring out who you're going to name in those roles. So if that's something you need help with, give us a call and we can do it together. You don't have to figure it out on your own, but there are tons of professionals who we can get you connected with if that's something that you're going to feel like you need in the future. Absolutely. Did we have any questions, Erin, that came in?
Krista, I think a few questions did come in. If you wouldn't mind, asking those of myself and Rebecca and Aileen, if they're directed towards her, that'd be great.
Um, let's see. Can you talk a little bit more about the beneficiary designation and how that works for different types of properties or assets like the 401k and some of the individual accounts that people might have?
Sure. So different financial institutions, unfortunately take different positions. Sometimes you might find that on, kind of straightforward accounts like checking and savings accounts, banks don't want to allow you to name more than one or even two beneficiaries on those accounts. Limited sometimes even with IRAs and 401ks and life insurance policies as well. So if you have kind of an extensive list of individuals or charities or a combination thereof that you want to include, you may want to use a trust to accomplish that, and then just name the trust as the beneficiary of those assets so that when you pass, it all pays into the trust and then it will be distributed to the underlying beneficiaries according to, whatever terms or provisions you've included within the trust. So that's a way to kind of expedite the handling of your estate and make things much easier to manage after you're gone.
If the
Great, thanks,
question is sort
Erin.
of practically how you name a beneficiary, it should be as simple as requesting a form from the financial institution, asking them for a beneficiary form, which you would go through and fill out and put the information for, who your beneficiaries are. Sometimes on an IRA or a life insurance policy, you can name a primary beneficiary and a contingent beneficiary. So if something happened to your primary beneficiary, you have somebody else named. But I wasn't sure if the question was like, how do you practically do that? It's requesting a form from the financial institution that you would then go through and fill out.
Absolutely, you're right.
And Aileen, could you tell us a little bit more about the Navigating Solo Network and who's that for and how can it be of benefit to maybe the people in our audience?
Sure. So I created the Navigating Solo Network, navigatingsolo.com, in October of 2021, because fortunately there were a number of talks being given and more visibility related to solo agers, but there wasn't a clearinghouse resource to be able to access a lot of resources directly for solo agers in kind of a one-stop place. And so I created navigatingsolo.com. It has a free resource library with recorded presentations, interviews, all of that. We have free gatherings, virtual gatherings throughout the year. We just launched Solo Aging Visibility Day, which is the second annual will be May 14th, 2025. And it's really a resource for people to be able to also launch off of finding local resources for themselves. It's all kinds of resources for people who frame themselves as solo agers, as Rebecca framed earlier, in whatever that means, right? So however someone sees themselves along that solo aging framework. And so it's a website that also has a mailing list. In August, we launched a podcast, and our 10th episode will be live tomorrow and is with an individual who's a financial advisor and has written a book on child-free individuals and financial needs. And so it's a really just a resource for people to tap into, because as both Erin and Rebecca pointed out, navigating solo and solo aging is not a singular experience, right? It's the notion of learning from and with each other. And so thanks for that question, because hopefully it will serve as a resource to people as well.
Aileen, I think people would also like to know, could you give maybe like one or two examples of scenarios in which your services at Beacon can be beneficial to people?
Sure. So often people do not know what an independent board certified patient advocate is, other than it's a very long title. Navigating the complexities of the healthcare system. That can be helping someone prepare for and attend a medical appointment and take notes or prompt that individual to effectively navigate their healthcare appointment. It can be filing an appeal due to an early discharge or what they feel to be a early discharge at a care facility or hospital, or negotiating a medical bill. We really do, I know this phrase is very overused, but deep dives into navigating the healthcare system, helping people understand their insurance benefits, how things should be covered, and what the system is, and also just demystifying the language of healthcare. So, go ahead.
What areas do you cover geographically?
Geographically? So I'm based in Brookline, Mass. I work with people all over the country, other than bedside work, where I would go and be part of the advocacy team for someone in a Massachusetts-based care facility. All of those other pieces can now be, as we're meeting together online, can now be done remotely. So I work with people all over the country. I do not serve as a healthcare proxy, but I serve as a bridge for a healthcare proxy. So if someone has a relative, for example, in Oregon, who's serving as their healthcare proxy, but they want to know there's someone boots on the ground here in Massachusetts who could advocate for that individual, work with the healthcare proxy, I can serve as that bridge as well, which I know many professionals do not serve in healthcare proxy roles, but can serve in other roles as well. So.
Unless our viewers have any other questions that they want to put in the chat, I think we've covered everything that has come in.
Great. Well, again, thank you so much for attending. We hope you found this valuable, and we look forward to being a resource for you in the future.